Hello, welcome back. So following on the success of my previous video, 6 areas I would never invest in, I'm doing another similar video. I'm giving you 5 more areas that, again, I would personally never invest in. Now make sure you stay tuned to the very end of this video because I think the last and the 5th area is really going to shock you. Now for those of you that don't know me, my name is Marco. I'm a portfolio landlord, property investor, developer and a mentor, and I'm very passionate about helping people invest in property. So I'm going to give you a little caveat before we kick off. Now yes, this video may offend those investors that maybe buy or live in those areas. I'm not saying these areas are bad areas, that these are personally areas that I will not invest in. And I'm going to tell you why I will not invest in these particular areas. And the lessons that we can learn from this video, we can apply to other areas in the UK too. Now with that being said, if I could acquire a property in these areas at a substantial discount, I'm talking 40% plus to the market value, then yes, I would probably buy in those areas. And again, I'd factor into my figures, giving it to a local agent to manage and rent it out going forward. So the first 2 locations are not too far from where I am in Leeds, which is Scarborough and Skegness, the 2 S's. Now here are the reasons why I would not invest in both Scarborough and Skegness. So these particular 2 locations are on the east coast of the UK, and they're quite popular for people, going on holidays and staying within the UK. However, that being said, I personally don't do serviced accommodation as a strategy. It's not something I necessarily agree with, and going forward, I think there are concerns about the serviced accommodation strategy. So it's not something I currently do at the moment, and therefore, this is why I would never invest in both Scarborough and Skegness, because yes, you may get a nice, healthy rental return, your yield is going to be high, but I think the values and the capital outlooks going forward in both these areas are going to be less than average in the UK going forward. And that's why I will not be investing in those 2 locations. As I've already mentioned before on the channel, a really important lesson to learn is don't chase a high yield, because you're going to get stung by a poor capital growth, or most likely stung by poor capital growth. And if you take an average example in the UK in terms of property investing and where you make your money, well actually you will make more money from the increase in price and value of that property over time rather than the rental yield. So again, always factor in and always think about the capital growth and potential capital growth of that property, because that's really, really important, and that's where you make most money in property generally. So let's come on to the next areas that I would never invest in. We're going to go from the east coast to the west coast, and we're coming on to Morecambe and Barrow-in-Furness. So number 3 Morecambe, number 4 Barrow-in-Furness. Now for anyone that lives in Morecambe, I do apologise, but Morecambe has had its day. It used to be a great place to go on a holiday 50 years ago, but it's a bit of a ghost town now. There's not too much going on. You can pick up property really cheap in Morecambe. I remember seeing some commercial premises there, substantial commercial premises, and they were only wanting about £200,000 for it. It's very, very cheap to pick up property. That being said, the job prospects and demand in that, especially in Morecambe, is quite low. So yes, you may rent it out, you may get a nice yield, but are you going to get the best tenant? Is that tenant going to be in there for the long term? I'm not too sure. There aren't that many great employers in the area. Again, similar to Barrow-in-Furness, property prices are really cheap in Barrow-in-Furness. You can pretty much buy any property you want to buy. But again, what is the capital outlook going to be like in that particular area? Are the values going to increase in line with the average home in the UK in the next 5-10 years? Personally, I do not think so. This is why I don't like investing in these types of cities and towns. Yes, I've got property nearby in Lancaster, and Lancaster's a great place to invest. Now, if you're looking for great places to invest, I'm going to link to a video that I did earlier in the year, which are 5 top property hotspots, buy-to-let property hotspots. I'll link to it in the description. Here's a picture of the thumbnail, and consider watching this video after you've watched this video all the way through to the very end. So just to recap on both Morecambe and Barrow-in-Furness, yes, again, don't chase that high yield. You will be stung by a poor capital growth. Right, on to the 5th and final area that I would not invest in, and this is going to shock a large majority of people, I guarantee, and that's London. Now here's the reason why I don't invest in London, and it's a lesson that you can learn and apply to other areas that you're also not familiar with. Rule number 1 for me is invest in an area that you know. Now don't get me wrong, you don't have to live there, you don't even have to have lived there, but if you know that area, you've got that inside knowledge and you know exactly what prices and values and rents are in that location. Yes, you could say to yourself, right, well Marco, I'm going to learn all about London, I'm going to spend the next 3 months researching the market and getting very close to it, and that's great and something I could do. However, that being said, there's another reason why I don't invest in London, and because in London the yield for me is too low. Yes, you can make lots of money on the capital side. Capital outlooks tend tend to be quite strong in London. And if you're buying below market value in London, that's a great way to make significant equity from day one in owning that property, just because property prices are so much higher. But for me, I don't like the yield. The yield is too low for me. You can get properties that are yielding 2% in London. I can't make my figures work on 2%. So a really important lesson that I want you to learn here is don't invest in areas that you don't know. If you don't know them and you want to invest in those areas, take the time to learn and understand and better know that area. And London, for me, is just one area I don't want to know. I have no interest in knowing. I know lots of people are very successful in London, but for me, I like to focus on the north, and I've got a really good handful of towns and cities in the north that I specialise in, that I know inside out. You tell me an address in that particular area, I'll tell you the value, probably to the nearest 5%. So before I recap the areas, I just want to recap the ideas on why I'm not investing in these particular areas. And we've got 3 ideas we've mentioned so far. So the first is not chasing a high yield and being stung by a poor capital growth. The second is because I don't do serviced accommodation, I'm not buying in those seaside towns that people may go for an Airbnb and for holidays. So again, you've got to work out what strategies, what property strategies you are targeting, and make sure you're buying in the areas that are perfect for those strategies. And lastly, the third point is don't buy in areas that you don't know. So if you're looking to see my original video on 6 areas to not invest in the UK, again, here's a picture of the thumbnail. I'll pop a link into the description. I hope this video has been useful and opened your eyes to more so the logic behind why I'm not buying in these areas rather than the areas themselves. Again, if you're local in these areas, use that to your advantage. You'll have an information advantage over other investors. And again, maybe you're able to pick up properties in those areas at really good price points. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thank you to my regular subscribers for your loyalty. Is there an area in the UK I haven't mentioned that you don't touch and you don't like and you don't want to invest in? If so, comment below and we'll see what other investors are thinking to those particular areas too. All the very best with your property investing day. Goodbye.